Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Ted Earhart. We really had a dose of deja vu this week as the issue of the debt ceiling came up again. It reminded me a lot of the year 2011 when we actually had the so-called debt ceiling crisis. And if you don't remember that, well, there's an entire Wikipedia page on it because it was that big of a deal. So just as a kind of high level, what is the debt ceiling? Well, Congress establishes the maximum amount of debt that the U.S. government can borrow. So there's an upward cap. And that's just the way it is. There's been a lot of people, including Warren Buffett, who have said we shouldn't even have a debt ceiling. We should just let the markets decide whether or not the U.S. is borrowing too much money based on interest rates. And the reason is because this ends up being used as a political tool or political leverage, and that's exactly what's happening or has happened this week. But long story short, Congress sets the maximum level of debt. And because the U.S. has constantly ran budget deficits, basically since World War II, basically every year or so, every couple of years, the debt ceiling has to be raised. And I think I read this week that since World War II, the debt ceiling has been raised like 80 times. It's typically done on a bipartisan basis, but again, every so often, just depending on the situation, for one political party or maybe even just a segment of one political party feels like this can be used as political leverage, they will do that. And that's basically what we saw this week and what we saw back in 2011. So the reason it's a big deal, if, hypothetically speaking, the debt ceiling is reached and actually breached, the U.S. government technically runs into a so-called default. And no one really knows what would happen if the United States government actually defaulted on its debt. I think one thing that very few people or a small percentage of the public actually really fully understands is government bonds, or the yields, the interest rates on government bonds really provide the basis for or underlie a lot of financial instruments, including floating rate debt. So oftentimes businesses or individuals, they will borrow and they will pay a spread. Sorry to use all the financial jargon here, but they will pay some spread above wherever government bond yields are. So long story short, sorry about all the jargon. If government bond yields spike up, that's going to mean the interest rate owed on all these debts that people have or businesses have, the interest rates are going to spike up as well. And that, of course, could create a whole series of events. It could kind of set off a domino reaction. And that's why the Treasury Secretary most recently said a government default would virtually assure a recession in the United States. If we go back to 2011, it was in the kind of middle of summer when this debate was happening, and the U.S. got closer than ever. Literally, I think it was 2 days from an actual default situation. And a deal was ultimately cut. But one thing that did happen is the United States government, our credit rating by one of the big agencies, was chopped from AAA to AA, and just that in and of itself created waves in the markets, and we saw stocks in the United States slide by nearly 20%. So that's kind of a preview, and this wasn't even a default situation. This was just a near default situation. So I think this is important for people to know. This week, however, the crisis was basically delayed. The can was kicked as a deal was cut. This is actually a headline today. Today's Friday, October 8th, and a deal was cut between the Senate and the Congress to temporarily raise the debt ceiling, so we won't be dealing with this again until December. So anyway, that was the kind of the big news of the week, and it did not reverberate over into the markets, but we'll see if it does in December unless a bigger deal is reached in Congress. If you want to see more videos like this, if you enjoyed this, you can check out our website or find me on YouTube. If you type Ted Earhart into the search bar, you'll find me and a whole bunch of other good stuff with it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.